Hey guys, welcome back to another tier list video. Apparently you've been loving these lately, so I'm probably gonna do these for a minute. Maybe, we'll see. Finn McKenty on his second channel just did a tournament style of the worst fan bases out there in music. And I asked you guys on social media what type of tier lists you'd want to see from me. One of you suggested best and worst fan bases, and I was like, okay, you know what? This will probably work. Keeping in mind up front, all fan bases have a certain level of toxicity. That's just the nature of fandom. I don't find making stuff like this very fulfilling, but you guys seem to love the entertainment factor of it, and I get it. You know, there's a certain amount of like, ooh, what's his answer gonna be? If you want something with more food for thought and a lot more honest, in-depth conversation, I definitely recommend my podcast. I loved my episodes with Anthony Vincent and Shredmaster Scott. We have an episode with Dovidas that's about to drop very soon. You can find that playlist around here, pinned comment, link in the description. It's everywhere. All right, let's get into it. Avenged Sevenfold fans. Think I'm gonna put them in C tier. They are by no means the most toxic fandom I've ever run into, but they can be really annoying. I have a live stream on Fridays, Song Suggestion Fridays, and I have a very specific rule that I don't want to listen to Avenged Sevenfold anymore because I've run out of things to talk about. But all you fuckers want to do is suggest Avenged Sevenfold songs. They're not that interesting. They're not that well-rounded. They have enough going on to where it's interesting. They have an evolution, but not enough to listen to one or two or three every fucking week. I have encountered very little toxicity from that fandom at all, but at the same time, I'm just like, it's a little weird you guys are that obsessed with this band. AC/DC fandom. Put them, you know what? I'll put them in A tier. Nah, you know what? With the boomers included, B tier. The younger AC/DC fans are actually pretty chill, I gotta say. No one's under any illusions what this is, except for the boomers. AC/DC, for some boomers, acts almost as an excuse to not experiment with music ever, and that's kind of annoying, and holy shit, they can be real fucking toxic. But it's a relatively small portion of their fan base, I would say. The Beatles, probably C tier, honestly. When it comes to diehard Beatles fans, they usually aren't that bad, but sometimes they can really suck. The obsession with John Lennon is gross, in my opinion. I know there's a bunch of people out there that want to shit on the Beatles and be like, they're so overrated, so overrated, so overrated. They're not overrated, man. But I will agree, over-obsessed about. I will fully agree with that. There definitely is a portion of toxicity in the Beatles fandom when they get real naggy or like overly obsessive. Especially when that Get Back documentary came out, it got really cringy, some of the fan reaction to it, but not the worst by far, not by a long shot. Black Sabbath, I'll give them, I'll give them an A tier. Very low on the toxicity scale from what I've experienced, and I've had a number of different critiques of Black Sabbath. When I do critique Black Sabbath, most fans think I'm out of my mind, which is fine. But for the most part, they've been super chill. Now, I mean, I think they kind of tend a little more on the elitist side than the super chill whatever side. There's a lot of crossover of this fandom into more of the obscure, shitty sounding metal subgenres, but not even close to the worst. Metallica fandom. This might be my bias because Metallica is one of my favorite bands. I'd give them a B tier. Nah, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I'll give them a C tier. The vast majority of Metallica fans are super chill, really cool. But then you have this segment that's obsessive over the purity of thrash or the selling out thing that happened for a minute. The guys that are into the newer Metallica shit are usually very good about hearing someone say, this is why I kind of hated those albums. But then again, you have that segment that's just like, Kill 'Em All was the greatest thing they ever made, and that's just so fucking wrong. And when you say you don't agree with them, they get mega butthurt. If we had the ability to just exile the thrash purists from the Metallica fandom, they'd be a B, honestly, easy. Pink Floyd, D. I made an entire video explaining my journey, exploring very deeply into Pink Floyd, and not just listening to all the records, though I did do that, but also doing a shitload of reading, a lot of background research to understand exactly what was going on, both in the band, but also what was happening culturally at the time, and the things that Pink Floyd actually innovated. I did have some critiques of the band, as I always will, and I said, I don't love Pink Floyd, but I have a hell of a lot of respect for what they did. And there's 2 albums that I love listening to. I still got so many comments of people either thinking I was completely full of shit for whatever reason that were fans of the band, or just being like, yeah, well, we've always known that, blah, blah, blah. Just like this absolute cocksure, self-assured self-righteousness, instead of inviting someone into the fold of enjoying Pink Floyd and like changing their mind on things. They were like, well, fuck it, you're still an idiot because you should have known sooner. That's the vibe that I got. Some of the most unjustifiably elitist motherfuckers out there. Remember, you didn't make the Pink Floyd music. They did. And just because you like listening to it definitely does not make you better than someone else. This is not the majority of the Pink Floyd fandom, but definitely a larger segment than it should be. Bob Dylan fandom, I'll give him a B tier. Most Bob Dylan fans acknowledge he was a horrible singer. Most Bob Dylan fans acknowledge he wasn't the greatest musician or arranger of all time. What they love about him are his lyrical stories, and that's fine, but that is like one of the least awesome things about music, in my opinion. I've had some people be weird earlier on, thinking that I was a complete asshole for not loving Bob Dylan, and I think they just really don't understand the like, okay, divorce semantic context from music, and then think about what makes it awesome. If you do that to Bob Dylan, it sucks. And that's something I really want to encourage more of on this channel, because I think there's been way too much leaning on very surface level, terrible semantic context in the industry. Outside of those rare instances where there are Bob Dylan elitists, there's not a ton of them. I just feel like that fandom is focusing on the wrong things in music as the number one. Maybe that's a blinder on my end, but I don't know, considering the trends of music nowadays and considering how absolutely stunning and mind-bending and life-changing an instrumental piece can be, I feel like there is a massive shift that needs to happen to correct for the fact that there's just way too much emphasis on lyrics. David Bowie, I'll give him a B. I kind of feel the same way about Bowie fans as I do Prince fans. There is this larger segment of super hardcore Bowie people that think he was a genius, never did any wrong, essentially speaking. And I definitely acknowledge Bowie's creativity and innovation. He did a lot of really cool stuff and somehow worked that into pop hits, which is pretty badass. I have gotten a little bit of toxicity from the Bowie fandom, so it's a little, I don't see the specialness of Bowie the same way that they do. I don't think that's a bad thing inherently, but it is a little weird how worshipped he is. It's a little, I don't know, guys. So that obsession factor kind of brings it down from an A for me. Dream Theater fandom, whew, it's between C and D. Being a member of the Dream Theater fandom, this is, this is hurting a little bit. All right, I gotta put them in D tier. Most Dream Theater fans that I know are maybe a little bit different, but they're not like crazy or mega obsessive, or for that matter, assholes. But man, they have a really strong contingent of overly ardent defenders. I mean, there's plenty of times where I've heard critiques of Dream Theater and been like, yeah, but feel like, you know, and I've wanted to really just be like, I feel like you're missing it, dude. At the same time, whether or not you feel a certain way about it, or you go into the comment section and act like a dickhead about it, two very different things. And I don't even know if it's like the same type of elitism as the Pink Floyd thing. It definitely has more of an angry virgin vibe with the Dream Theater fandom. I critiqued one single from Dream Theater one time, one video, and I had a ton of people in the comments just being like, You're Satan. You are forever wrong. I'm never listening to anything you do ever again. That is fucking stupid. Eagles fandom. I'll put them in A. One, I chose the football team's logo because the band logo is hot trash, terrible. And two, I don't know that I've ever met or encountered that many hardcore Eagles fans. It just seems to be casual du jour. I have talked a hell of a lot of shit on the Eagles, and the fandom has been mostly like, eh. So in that sense, one of the least toxic fan bases I've ever dealt with in my life. Also, you really love the Eagles. So just for having remarkably bland taste, they are not S tier. Probably some of the chillest music fans out there, but I'm still kind of judging you a little bit. Foo Fighters fans, S tier. Maybe I've just been remarkably lucky. The Foo Fighter fandom has been some of the chillest people I've ever met. And even if you're like, I don't like the band, they're like, okay, don't see the show, or don't listen to it. They're like, I've never seen them lose their shit in a comment section ever. Again, maybe I missed something. Very inviting, very welcoming, non-clingy, not even that obsessive. I mean, there's a little bit of that in there, but you're gonna get that with any fandom, right? Just cool. Grateful Dead, F tier, not even a question. The hardcore Grateful Dead fandom was a meme before the internet existed. This is not a blanket statement of all Grateful Dead fans, just the incredibly hardcore ones that think they are the greatest thing to ever happen to music ever. And this goes for a lot of that jam band scene. Simultaneously cringy and can be very toxic. It's just the worst of all combinations. They are not in left field. They are 10 miles away from the stadium, lost and asking for directions, and also asking if the person giving them directions has money for gas. They are so fucking disconnected from reality. Gwar, S tier. I have never encountered, nor could I possibly imagine, a toxic Gwar fan. They just want to go to the show and be sprayed with blood and alien semen. Pretty badass to me. Arguably one of the best fandoms to have ever existed. Again, I could be wrong, but everything I've seen is like the chillest fucking people I've ever met. Black metal fans, F tier. Probably the worst fandom on planet Earth. Unjustifiably elitist for how little skill, practice, intentionality, and discipline goes into making that horrible sounding art. I've railed on black metal for a very long time. I don't have to rehash all of it, but to be such a fucking dickhead for something that is so obviously not refined, not practiced, not even really cared about. Let's be honest. The people making that stuff care way more about the imagery and the culture than they do actually trying to craft something that's great. This is not every black metal band, but it's a fucking shitload of them. When it comes to people that just enjoy black metal and they like other stuff too, and they're not being dickheads about it, those are some of my fans. They're super chill. That's fine. When it comes to black metal elitists, the really bad ones, I cannot fathom the amount of extreme cognitive dissonances that is locking them into this horrible frame of mind and perspective. Easily have the proportionally largest toxic component I've ever had in any fandom ever. Terrible. And for the dingleberry cherry on top of the shit sundae, look up the neo-fascist white supremacist movement within the black metal community. How about that? Iron Maiden fandom. I think I'll go A tier. Again, this could be some of my biases because I do love Iron Maiden. I have never encountered toxic Iron Maiden fans, and I'm sure they exist somewhere, but they seem to be mostly just chill, classic metalheads, The only reason why I bumped them down is I feel like some of them aren't self-aware enough to realize there is a shitload of recycling going on a bunch of these Iron Maiden songs. And there's like still a ton of them that want to defend the latest Iron Maiden stuff. And I don't get it at all. It seems so overly drawn out for no reason whatsoever. They seem to love it. It's fine, but I don't understand, guys. Jimi Hendrix. C tier. The people that are casual Jimi Hendrix enjoyers and the people that really enjoy Jimi Hendrix but don't play guitar are usually really cool. And they're not like, oh, you don't like Jimi Hendrix? What the fuck's wrong with you? The hardcore guitar playing devotee segment of Jimi Hendrix fans are pretty fucking annoying. They get a little too obsessive. I think they give him far more credit than what he deserves, but hey, who am I to say? There is, weirdly enough, an elitist faction of the Jimi Hendrix fandom. Not nearly as toxic as I've seen from other communities, but yikes. Led Zeppelin fans. It's a little tough to say. I kind of want to say B tier, maybe A tier. I'm not sure. I've never really encountered a toxic Led Zeppelin fan, I don't think. You know what? I'll give them B tier. For one of the similar reasons that I gave AC/DC the B tier. The boomers. Most Led Zeppelin fans that I know, super chill, really great hang, not weirdly elitist about the band that they love, though some of them get really into it, and it's understandable why they have a certain level of obsession with them. There is a segment of the boomer class in the fandom that are weirdly elitist and want to use Led Zeppelin as one of the examples of real music. That is a larger segment, but they're not just Led Zeppelin fans, and their justification for it isn't only Led Zeppelin. So that's why they're not down in C tier. But yeah, I mean, that boomer segment, they're so fucking annoying, man. The kind that think Eddie Trunk is the word of Christ. Manowar, S tier fandom. Since the inception of this channel, I have said nothing about Manowar other than negative things, period. And I have had nothing but neutral to positive responses to all of the Manowar fans I've interacted with. Is this band great? Absolutely not, in my opinion. But the fans, undeniably anti-toxic, possibly the least toxic fandom that exists. They just want to imagine themselves in their fucking fantasy world and listen to some dude sing faux epically. For all of the abuse that I have given them, they have been so incredibly chill and still want me to try and enjoy Manowar for whatever reason. They're great. They're not even obsessive. That's the best thing too. Nine Inch Nails fans, it's between A and B. I'll give them a B. I've crapped quite a lot of Nine Inch Nails too, and I don't regret that in the fucking least. The fans have actually taken it pretty well, all things considered, and that's super cool. But there is something about a segment of that goth fandom that definitely makes me like, I don't know if I should hang out with these people. No, it's not because of how they're dressed, although that's certainly a small factor of it. There's something a little off with hardcore Nine Inch Nails fans, at least some of them. I don't trust it. Nirvana, C tier. I made my famous why I don't love Nirvana or why whatever video that did a whole bunch and still is sitting about at 50% likes versus dislikes. One of the most mixed responses I've gotten to any video ever. There were a bunch of Nirvana fans in there being like, hey, I get you, I understand. Kurt would even agree with you on some of the critiques. There were some Nirvana fans in there who were like, I think you're completely wrong, but you're entitled to your opinion. There were a ton of super toxic Nirvana fans in there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put them down to D for that one, man. Thinking about the toxicity of these fandoms versus the Nirvana fandom, it's not quite as terrible as Pink Floyd, but it's same-ish level as Dream Theater, honestly. It's crazy how two very different artists still bred the same level of unjustified, annoying elitism. Yeah, the toxic segment of the Nirvana fandom is much larger and more intense than it ever should be. Opeth fans, I'll put them in B tier. Again, I do have a bias because they're one of my favorite bands. I have encountered very little toxicity from the Opeth fandom. Of course, I have done almost nothing but praise them. There is a segment that is definitely elitist and annoying and cringy, like the Dream Theater fandom, but it has a little bit of crossover in the black metal fandom, and there's also a little bit of crossover in that prog fandom. This is weird thing where like the two opposite types of music kind of cancel each other out a little bit. So there's like still a certain toxic level in that fandom, but substantially less than either one of those fandoms. Pantera, I'm going to put them in C tier. Dimebag Darrell was an extremely influential guitar player, very great guitar player, and he wrote some great riffs. I feel like with the intensity I've seen of the love for Pantera, a weird obsession that if I ever did make a video critiquing them, I would get such a fucking toxic backlash. I'm like expecting it. Eventually, I'm going to have to make a Pantera video. And no, I'm not just going to say nice things about them. That's for damn sure. Queen fandom. I'll give them an A. I've seen nothing but people being super chill. They get a little obsessive over the Freddie Mercury thing a little bit. I think that has partly to do with him dying early. God rest his soul. I don't think I've ever seen any Queen toxicity online anywhere, but they are like a smidge obsessive when you get into the really hardcore Queen fans. I will say, though, they got a very diverse catalog and they know how to arrange things really well, and they had some extremely talented guys. So it's like, okay, I get it. Radiohead, D tier. It's a meme at this point. A large enough segment of them are toxic, annoying, and like the type of elitism that you're gonna get from like a Pink Floyd fandom. It's really cringe. I don't think Radiohead are a terrible band by any means, but I think you guys need to slow your roll a little bit. Ramstein fandom, I'll give them an A. Most of the ones I know are incredibly chill, don't really have an elitist taste in music whatsoever. The only reason why they're not an S tier is because I feel like Rammstein attracts a certain segment of people that's not the entire fandom, but just like enough of one that where I'm like, I don't know if I want to hang out with these people alone. Rush, I'll give them a C tier. Most Rush fans that I know are very chill, really cool. They do get a little obsessive. Like the guys that are really into Rush are really into Rush. And there is some overlap between the Rush elitism that crops up and the Led Zeppelin elitism. And it's a different kind because it also kind of blends in with the Dream Theater elitism a little bit. But it also blends in with that boomer thing, you know? There's even like a hair of that Pink Floyd type of elitism going on. Yeah, like mostly the Rush fans that I do know are super cool, but the ones that are like mega obsessive and elitist about it, they do exist and they kind of suck. Slayer fans, I will also put in C tier. Similarly to how I explained Rush, mostly super chill fans, but the ones that are elitist about it are so fucking annoying. Like similarly to how black metal fans think that this horrible cobbled together dog shit is the greatest music that's ever been made, is how a certain segment of Slayer fans treat Slayer. It's the thrash purists that I was talking about earlier. There is a higher proportion of that in Slayer than there is Metallica, but they also aren't remotely as vocal, I would say. Slipknot fans, I'll give a B. I've talked a lot of shit on Slipknot. They're not the worst band ever. The thing that doesn't click for me is the insane love for Slipknot. There is a very obsessive segment of that audience that is less toxic than a lot of other ones, though still has some toxicity in it. I'm just thinking to myself, like, dudes, come on. It's okay. Sometimes it kicks ass, rarely in my opinion, but just like, it's just like chill out, guys. It's just a new wave of American heavy metal song. Actually, they're kind of more second wave or whatever. I don't fucking know. They're generically American metal. That's how I would classify it. The Doors, F. Granted, I have said many horrible things about the Doors on my channel. I have also encountered a lot of extremely chill Doors fans. But the toxicity that came from the Doors fandom was, I think, the second worst I've ever experienced in my life. I can understand liking the Doors and disagreeing with someone who hates the Doors. Totally understand that. You like what you like. But to have that level of elitism that like a Dream Theater fandom or a Pink Floyd fandom or even a Nirvana fandom would have for the fucking Doors, it's like one step above having that type of elitism for the fucking Ramones. Like, I don't think you understand what's going on here, pal. Tool fans, I'll give them a B tier. There's a lot of talk about the Tool fandom being very toxic. From my experience, they have been mostly chill even when I critiqued Tool. There was very little toxicity in my video where I just absolutely dissected the band and said what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. Granted, I didn't outright say I hate Tool, except that might have been the title just for clickbaity type of shit. But unlike a bunch of the other fan bases below them on this tier list, there were a ton of Tool fans in the comments being like, yeah, there's a segment of our fandom that is so fucking cringy and I can't stand them. Their own fans were like, yeah, there's some of us that really suck. That level of self-awareness I find so refreshing. And I found most Tool fans in real life that I've interacted with to be super cool. So that's why they don't go lower. Because, like, man, there is a segment of them, but even other Tool fans are like, they fucking suck. Van Halen, C tier. Similarly to the Jimi Hendrix thing, you have your casual, non-guitar playing Van Halen fans that are really chill. Super, super chill. Then you have this segment of Eddie Van Halen devotees that can get to the level of cringe and obsession. And like, there's no one who's ever going to be better than Eddie Van Halen. I'm just thinking to myself, there's already well over 20 people that are better than Eddie Van Halen. Like, if we're talking innovation, yeah, none of those 20 guys innovated on Eddie Van Halen's level. Complete, utter respect for that. But if we're talking just like as a guitar player and with expression, that is so up to taste. And there's so many more guys that I feel like have such a broader range than what Eddie did. But I'm not here to critique Eddie Van Halen right now. As awesome as he was, there's a weird type of elitist blinders that goes up with these Van Halen guys. And I've never seen them be mega toxic, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was that boomer segment in there that kind of ruins it for the rest of the chill people. So here's my tier list. I don't know. I think it's maybe a little unexpected, but I think it's pretty accurate based upon my experiences anyway. Did I miss any bands? Do you agree or disagree with where I put people? Let me know in the comments down below. Remember to check out my podcast for stuff that isn't just bitching about bitching. Seriously, I've been loving the conversations we've been having on there. I'll catch you guys later.